Imagine yourself the sort of person who tends to examine everything that you do. You want to live a moral life. You want to do what's right. You take your duties as a human being seriously. You take your moral obligations seriously, and you would like to be virtuous and essentially a good person. Now, it's Poland. It's 1939. You're Jewish. And tomorrow, the armies of the Third Reich, Nazi Germany, are about to pour across the border of your country. What do you do now? What happened to all your desire to do the right thing? The idea that virtue was its own reward, that being moral would somehow make the world a better place. You've completely lost control of the situation. You've completely, essentially, lost control of your life. Morality, good luck with that one now. Well, that's kind of a gross example of the number of curves that life can throw at us all over the course of a human life, the span of a human life. But oftentimes, things just get to be too much, and it's too much to take, and the human spirit can be crushed by it. Well, the Bhagavad Gita starts off with Prince Arjuna, who's sort of the everyman, the morally upright everyman who wants to do what's right by his family, by his gods, by his duty in his place in society. He wants to be moral. He wants to be a good person. But through an insane series of events, he's found himself at the head of an army, opposing another army that's made up and commanded by his best friends, by his relatives, and by his former teachers. A totally nightmarish scenario to be in. And he just can't take it. It's too much for him. He sort of says, this is just too crazy. I just want to blot it all out, and I just want to sit down and forget about it. It's too much. Well, again, in the Hindu scheme of things, all is not what it seems. Prince Arjuna, our everyman, is a powerful member of one of the various Aryan clans, and his dark-skinned servant, charioteer, is actually Krishna, who's come down, the god Vishnu, to instruct Arjuna in how to cope with life and the curves that life throws at you. The impression that I get is that a lot of people think that Hinduism, or the Eastern philosophies in general, tend to lead one towards a position of nihilism or quietism or retreat from everything, or just despair even. I would say it's actually, at least in terms of the way that it's presented, I would say that it probably says exactly the opposite. Because Krishna basically says to Prince Arjuna, whether you like it or not, this battle is going to happen. Whether you like it or not, these armies will clash, people will be killed, women will be raped, all kinds of horrible things will happen. Relative will kill relative, millions will die. Whether you are involved or not, it's going to happen. And that's kind of what we would hear Krishna telling to that hypothetical Jewish Pole in 1939. Disaster's coming. That's just the way the world is. Sometimes the world is good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it hands you everything on a silver platter, and the next day it smashes you to pieces. That's just the way it is. But if you go inward, if you inwardly withdraw from it, you can cope with it. At the time, Hinduism was dealing with a challenge from Jainism and Buddhism, which basically said, essentially, withdraw from life, withdraw from the hubbub of life into a monastic existence and forget about it. But a lot of people were saying, well, that's not the easiest thing to do, because I've got to eat and I've got to deal with all kinds of other headaches in this world, and besides, it takes a lot of strength to do something like that. And what the Gita was trying to do was to sort of present this idea of withdrawal while at the same time acting in a world that it is impossible often to ignore. You just get your life straightened out, everything is going well, and suddenly you're a New Yorker and 2 planes crash into the World Trade Center. What do you do now? You would think that Hinduism, if Hinduism was a negatory religion, a world-negating sort of philosophy, that it would say the best thing to do is to curl up into a ball and try and shield yourself against the world. Maybe stockpile food and weapons and take off into the countryside and forget about it. There's nothing you can do. The situation's out of control. But again, Krishna tells Arjuna, no. Buck up. Don't worry about the consequences. Don't worry about moral choices, or at least don't worry too much about them. Try to do what's right, but inwardly create a calm, create a serenity, create an indifference to the world. Because whether you are into it, whether you believe in it, whether you act in it, the world is going to keep happening. You can't stop it. That's the way the world is. It's random, it's crazy, and sometimes it overwhelms you. It is ultimately Maya. And if you get too worked up in it, you accumulate more karma. In other words, you become more mentally attached to it, to a world that is ultimately random. This is sort of a response to some people that had said that Hinduism was preaching solipsism, or I suppose nihilism or something. But when you hear the words of Krishna, he says, yes, Prince Arjuna, I understand how you feel. I understand your despair. But just try to do nothing and see how far that gets you. Learn to cope with the world by detaching yourself from it, not physically, but emotionally and perhaps psychologically. That's not nihilism. That's not giving up. And that's not just an admission that we know nothing about the universe. It's an admission that the universe is going to keep happening, and we've got to cope with it. But Krishna tells Arjuna, the answer is right inside of you, and it's been there all along. All you have to do is recognize it. Thank you.